Hey, welcome, friends. Thanks for being here. Really honored to have Dani Katz on today and look forward to asking her some questions. How are you today, Dani?
I'm well, Joel. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for
Cool.
having me. You look so radiant.
Oh, thanks. I'm on this new land. It's 20 acres and I've been here by myself and just been getting a lot of sun and eating some mushrooms and doing some fun things by myself. So it's been great.
Oh, nice. Did you eat mushrooms for our podcast?
No, I mean, I microdose. I'm on Genius formula today.
Both of us.
Yeah, cool. Good medicine. Yeah, I'm excited to be interviewing him and be on his channel. And I wanted to start off by asking you, I'm super jealous that you were a pen pal to Tom Robbins. It's just like, I can't believe I know somebody that got to have that magical privilege. So I had a really beautiful, I started rereading Tom Robbins just all of a sudden, like I needed it, like a total revisit to what I used to focus on. And I was in a bookstore buying one of his books, and somebody from across, one of the employees said, "Oh, a memorial buy." So I found out that he had died by going to buy one of his books and someone telling me, and it was kind of like I felt him
hmm
in that moment, and I just really was so thankful that I was called to read his stuff as he was crossing, not after. Like the timing was really cool, but I'm so glad that you and I both enjoy his writings. But yeah, the fact you got to connect with him, can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think it was around the early 2000s, maybe 2001, and I was always a fan of his books, and like as soon as he was put out a new one, I was, right there
Yeah.
devouring it. And I just had a lot of moxie, especially as a journalist.
Sure.
So I found his address through his publisher, and at the time I was illustrating all of my articles, and I was showing my illustrations in galleries in LA. So I put a lot of like dorky, spazzy illustrations on the envelope, thinking, all right, well, this is going to catch his attention.
Yeah.
And he was super sweet, and he wrote back, and so we had a pretty rollicking exchange for
Wow.
15, 17 years, and it was so wonderful. And then he came to Los Angeles when I was living there to do a live reading of B is for Beer, which he did with Ben. I mean, he's a rock star. He's from Australia.
Mm.
And it was wonderful. It was my first time seeing him in person. And there was this long line of people who brought their Tom Robbins books to get signatures. And what I've learned is when authors are doing public readings, everyone wants to take something from them. They want recognition, eye contact, a kind word, a signature, something. So I saw that was going on, and I had brought him a copy of my coloring book. So I was in
Mm.
kind of a different line. I said, "Excuse me, Tom, I just wanted to give you this book. I don't know if you remember me. I'm Dani." And he goes, "Oh, Dani, of course I remember you." And what was
Wow.
interesting, Joel, was it was amazing that he said he remembered me. But then there was a woman standing there who was witnessing this, and she said, "Rad." And having someone else there to see it rendered it real.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really wonderful. I have a very small sparse altar, which is basically just an unabridged dictionary with some cloth on it. And my last letter from Tom Robbins is on that altar.
Oh my gosh. That's so cool. I'm so glad that you found someone that in a similar career as a writer yourself. And I did read a little bit of your going back and forth with him on a post you shared, and you are a really amazing writer as is he. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. So how did you find yourself becoming a journalist, and what other things do you do and offer, and what can you tell us for the listeners that maybe have not met you yet?
Sure. I do a lot of things. It can it can be
Yeah.
confusing for myself as well as for other people. So, yeah, I started off as a journalist. My first love was writing. I was always writing little stories. I was a total book nerd. I would hide books, all,
Yeah.
like in the back of the car, and be reading all the time. And I think it was I was also really devoted to justice and the truth. And so I started getting my panties in a bunch when I started elementary school and we had to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I
Yeah.
said, but there's supposed to be a separation of church and state. And why am I forced to say under God? And this is lame. And so I started writing letters to the president and telling him all the changes I thought he should be making. And so my first desire was to be the speechwriter for the president because as a child I thought, well, then I can create all the policy, but I don't have to be front and center. I could just run the world in secret.
Yeah.
And then I was in this like gifted program. I'm just checking my mic to make sure it sounds okay. I was in this like gifted program where I was allowed to go to like I don't know if it was like the House, and it was a bunch of politicians kind of doing their thing. And I was shocked that there was no integrity. It was all compromise and quid pro quo. And I really quickly realized, like, oh, I really don't want anything to do with this.
Yeah.
But I loved Woodward and Bernstein, and I loved the idea of like investigating things and exposing the truth. I loved the movie Broadcast News with Holly Hunter. So I went into journalism, and as soon as I started journalism school, my first print class, I thought, well, this is really boring because I went to USC. I got my master's in journalism, and USC is known for their ethics and like high degree of journalistic ethics. And so writing like straightforward, not editorialized, like just the facts, all sides journalism, I thought was really boring. So I changed my major to broadcast journalism. And soon after, I discovered my two great loves, Hunter S. Thompson and psychedelics.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And when I read Hunter, I thought, oh, wait, we're allowed to do this? This is an option as a journalist? And then I found my way to Joan Didion and Tom Wolfe and realized like this kind of gonzo journalism was an option. So then I picked it up. I started writing for the LA Weekly. I wrote mostly about art and like underground culture, Burning Man, spirituality, yoga, psychedelics. Like they call me their nutter butter writer. So everything like kind of weird, conspiracies, you know, I was definitely into. I was producing the news for KPFK when 9/11 went down. So that was fantastic because I was in a newsroom. I had so many resources. So like when Bush named North Korea to the axis of evil, and I asked my news director, I'm like, why would he do that? And he's like, here's the phone, call North Korea, figure it out. So I woke up to a lot in that job, but also realized like quickly, like how quickly the CIA had come into all the newsrooms and things were being censored. And I'm sure that was happening pre 9/11, but I didn't really hit the newsroom scene until like right around that time. And so I was really disillusioned by the censorship and like kind of being strong armed. So I went more into like just arts and culture and that sort of thing.
Wow. Wow. Very cool. And yeah, so how long were you working for that paper?
I wrote for the Weekly for about 10 years, and I was also contributing to LA Times, Vice, Whole Life Times. I had a column in Santa Fe Reporter. I wrote for Reality Sandwich for several years until I was banned. I got banned from a lot of places as like identity politics started to become more of a thing.
Mm.
So I got banned from Reality Sandwich for writing an article about, this was in 2012, and it was about gender reassignment surgery seen through the lens of the 53rd gene key. And because in that gene key, he talks a lot about like kind of Ken Wilber and I'm blanking on his name, Spiral Dynamics. It'll come to me. But the idea was that life evolves to transcend and include every step that came before it. And I was proposing, you know, inviting a small group of people to cut off their genitals and become addicted to pharmaceuticals doesn't feel like transcending and including. And while I'm always going to defend freedom and anyone's right to do whatever they want, is this really our most compassionate way of handling this new thing that is emerging? And that was my first experience of being like canceled and having all this drama. And so then when I came to Reality Sandwich and said I'd like to write about Black Lives Matter and how the languaging is going to absolutely create more racism, they said, we can't handle the drama that you bring. We're pretty much done.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. I mean, somebody needs to say it, right? And Yeah, and so you active you I've heard you're active in Santa Fe where you're kind of still putting your face in the room and speaking to dynamics around decisions they're making. Can you speak to what you're dealing with there?
Yeah, I am. So, as I said, I've always had this like inkling towards justice.
Yep.
So I was living in Santa Fe 2011 to 2015. Then I moved back to Los Angeles and I didn't even recognize my hometown.
Wow.
It was devolving so quickly.
Yeah.
And I did my best to be outspoken there around, like issues with 5G and stuff like that, and didn't really get anywhere. So I got this strong hit in November of 2019, and my gut just said, get out of LA right now. Like, just
Wow.
pack your car and leave quickly. Don't overthink it. Leave.
Wow.
And from being in news, I always knew something was coming.
Yeah.
So I came to Santa Fe, and we know what's gone on, but what I'm observing in Santa Fe, the same thing that I saw happen in LA. I just see the same kind of markers of the attempted takedown of this city. And because I've already gone through it once, I'm not really willing to go through it again. So there's a part of my soul that likes to believe that like I can change the world, and I've come to a place of like, this is the game my soul likes to play. Like, I don't really have to be too attached to that, but I recognize this is how I like to do it here.
Cool.
And so I put my heart and soul into Plandemic 2, which I co-wrote with Mickey Willis.
Wow.
And we really thought, or I mean, I really thought we were going to stop it. Like I was, there's this kind of lens of idealism that I often operate through. And we really thought like, we're going to shut this down and it's going to be over, and didn't foresee the giant censorship machine
Right.
operating the way it did. So I realized like maybe that type of large scale change isn't possible, but maybe a more small scale local change is possible. And just realizing as the world gets crazier and crazier, I don't have a lot of say, or really any say, as what's happening in Gaza, or what's happening in the Congo.
Yeah.
But I do live here and I do
Sure.
have a voice here. So, right around the time of the George Floyd riots and all the Soros funded Antifa nonsense, they ripped down 2 statues here in Santa Fe.
Wow.
And they've since banned a bunch of the Hispanic rituals and traditions. And so
Hmm.
for me, it's just more like I see what they're doing and I see that they're trying to take a crowbar to the knees of Santa Fe, and I'm not okay with it. So I have been going to a lot of the city council meetings. I mean, I was attending them on Zoom during
Mm.
COVID, and as soon as the mayor would see me, he would say, public participation is 60 seconds tonight. And it was like, oh great, like let's not even pretend to be a republic. Like you clearly don't care.
Mm.
But I've been, doing my best to frame things around like, this is what we see in every authoritarian takeover. They try to erase the culture's history. I've been banned from all the papers in New Mexico, where I used to write, but what got me banned was when I called the New Mexico Health Department to ask how many cycles of PCR they were running and how they were gathering their numbers.
Yeah.
Their operatives called every paper in New
Wow.
Mexico. So it's been really frustrating because, I have 4 planets in Aries. There's definitely this like warrior for justice. Katz actually means priest of justice. So there's this drive to restore balance. And so, it's finding ways that I can do that given how many gatekeepers there are and how many obstacles there are, because of so many civil rights violations. So we have a secret project going on right now here in Santa Fe that I'm not going to speak too much about, just to protect it. And we have an interesting angle that I think could actually flip this.
Wow. Oh, you're a warrior. Yeah. Going out there on the front lines. That's intense.
I don't want to and I don't like to, but
Yeah.
I can. And I know that I'm uniquely oriented, and I
Yeah.
just feel like someone like it's not okay. And from everything I've read, Hannah Arendt, and like learning about fascism and authoritarian takeovers, is that it's so important that we don't normalize it and that we continue to speak out. And so it's not comfortable. It doesn't win me friends. I don't actually have, like, I think a lot of people think because I speak so openly and forcefully about things that like I'm a total hard ass, but I'm really a super softie.
Cool.
So like every time I'm bullied in town or was bullied for like not covering my face or whatnot, like I don't like it. It doesn't work
Right.
well for me, but I just need to be able to sleep at night, which means doing everything that I can to restore justice.
Oh. Yeah, that was intense time being the only one in Capitol Hill in Seattle that wasn't masked and going into grocery stores. It would take like an hour and a half just to get in the door, and just and all these people are coming around and they're just ganging up on you because you're like this, you represent freedom to these people that are terrified, and so I was already prepared for that. Like I trained in the shamanic arts a long enough time that I didn't actually get beat up from it. I got really it was very liberating, and a lot
Mhm.
of healing happened, but I kind of thought everything was going to go really, really quick and get really bad, right? So I was in a fear state and a paranoid state, and it's been really a process. Just especially I lost so many spiritual advisors and teachers that went along with all this. It really broke my heart, to just I was bringing simple concepts to them, and I could just see, and I think it has a lot to do with people's income. These are people that should have been able to see through this, but they weren't willing to lose that access to their social benefits of being a normie in that respect. So it's just, and they're still not coming around and saying anything, and everyone's just going along with it like nothing happened.
Yeah, it's weird. And I appreciate you bringing that up because I do think the loss of the spiritual teachers and the people that I looked up to was a different kind of heartbreak. There's so many levels and layers. But I remember I started to get very concerned when Trump was running the first time and right after Me Too, when I
Yeah,
saw people in the spiritual communities, people who I had done medicine ceremonies with, using really dehumanizing, divisive language around men or around white people. I just
yeah,
thought, like, this is not going in a positive direction. And I had been in a Tibetan Mahayana tradition for quite a long time. So I was a fan of Robert Thurman and I read his books and I used to go see him speak. And, he was this like great Tibetan Buddhist academic. And I saw him like ripping on Trump supporters, and
sure.
we had a Twitter exchange where I was just like, I'm legitimately confused because I know that right speech is a central precept
Mm.
of Tibetan Buddhism, and I'm not understanding your rhetoric. And we had a pretty intense back and forth, and I respected him for doing it with me. And he ended up recording like an hour and a half YouTube video as a response to me. And about an hour into that video, out of nowhere, totally unprompted, he said, "And thanks to the great George Soros, all of this is about to be fixed." And exactly, exactly the look on your face. I was like, am I hallucinating? Like, I sent the video to multiple people, like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Why is this happening? It really spun me out. And I ended up reaching out to, at the time, one of my spiritual teachers, Richard Rudd, to help kind of walk me through that heartbreak. And I did a podcast about it. And then I received so many people's perspectives on Buddhism and the Dalai Lama. And it was one
Mm.
like level of my foundational worldview that losing that definitely rocked me for a moment.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of a rite of passage, we get to have these experiences that are very jolting, and it serves as a means to give us, a new adventure, right? It is uncomfortable and terrifying to kind of face what the nothingness that's spreading, right? It's not happening, it's happening. But our ability to not lose hope and to find encouragement in the areas where there is. I just interviewed Mark Gober, and he talked about how this last confluence there was a new feeling of encouragement, and I wasn't there, but I appreciate that these people like you and I are talking and that we're all having these conversations. And a lot of people are coming out of hypnosis more and more, and especially now it's like, wait, what's going on? Everyone's kind of like, and these are I think these are just as there's forces that rise to meet each other. So we have these force that is very much harvesting energy, and I don't think it's human, and I think it has possessed people, and I think we're dealing with something that's very focused and is it's very uh unbending in its intention. It just stays, doing its job, which is to feed off of people's fear and false hope.
Yes.
And so it's a very sobering thing for to be able to look at what's going on in the world without getting lost in it. So I appreciate that you have a voice in there and that you're not pretending to be further along or detached, right? And yet there is a way to be somewhat detached while you pretend to be attached so that you don't get too beat up if things don't go the way you would like. Because ultimately, I think we're in a dream, and as terrifying as things are the Earth Mother is conscious and intelligent, and there's all these balancing forces that are in place to ensure that humanity continues on some way. But it might get pretty scary. Like the reservations happened, we can see patterns throughout history and what can take place as we move into these potential, like, do you foresee another attempt at using germs, as a means to lock people down? Do you have any pulse on what you think that these different events might be moving forward?
Well, this is one of one of the places where I see that the truther community um, could evolve
Yeah,
is to not prescribe worst case scenarios and to
good.
not what I call disaster bait. So,
Awesome.
um, do I think they're going to pull more false flags? Probably, because this plan has been in place for hundreds of years. They're
Yeah,
operating with a different version of time, whether they're human
sure.
or interdimensional or extra dimensional, whatever it is. And I do think they're losing, right? I do think that they're very disempowered and they're losing. If they weren't losing, they wouldn't need to lie, coerce, censor, all those things. They don't have as much power as we, the people, have. So I think they're going to try to throw more noodles at the wall. But I also think, as you know, like I'm a big believer that language programs are reality. So I would never validate or
Yeah,
ratify their silly plans by saying they're going to happen. Um,
awesome.
I'm really more focused on like us coming together and dreaming a better version of reality. And the more clear that we are on how that better version of reality works, then the easier it's going to be for us to empower and live into that dream instead of continuing to play defense to their gross dream.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. Good work. Yeah, it's a lot of my friends are into decoding and like changing the algorithm of thought by speaking, even aligning with certain characters and say, I'm gonna intend for this person to become helpful instead of
Mhm.
hijacked, and just speak different storylines, and it's very imaginative and creative to do so. And I think we are capable of maybe there's not as many of us, but maybe the more clear and aware those of us are, it has a greater effect than just the huddled masses who are just co-creating this reality by dreaming forward what Hollywood, is putting in their psyche. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I wouldn't even like I don't even think they're dreaming it. They're just regurgitating a dream that, has been indoctrinated into them. And I think, I'm sure you've experienced this where you walk into a room and given your expansion and your wholeness and how much you've done, like how that can kind of raise the frequency,
yeah,
right? Other people are going to come up to meet you. And also as someone who's been, I've kind of balked at the term conspiracy theorist for all the obvious reasons.
yep,
I just say, like, I'm just a good journalist. Like,
yeah,
I'm literally just doing my job. But
right,
I've been accused of being a conspiracy theorist for 25 years.
yeah,
And the amount of people today who are clued into these things versus even just 10 years ago, it's
or-
exponential how many
yeah,
people are waking up and how quickly.
um,
And I think also remembering that we have help. There are helpful beings in
I
the
agree.
unseen realms I had a long talk with Bigfoot last night and just saying,
Yeah.
like, I need your help with this.
Awesome. Yeah, I experienced that too. And I dream with the Yeti. They most beautiful energy too. Like we were being hunted and there was like no fear. And we were in this most magical world and we were just telepathic. And they didn't look like what Yeti looked like in in the depictions. It was very, very soft energy and really, really otherworldly, other reality like. And I just really think we're being totally worked with. Absolutely. The trees, the birds, everything is aware and observing us.
Yeah.
And our ability to remember that and to have emotional healing occur makes room for us to be capable of being warriors that can do the things that takes great courage to do, which sometimes is speak truth to power. And my teacher was asking me, why are you interested in this stuff? Like she was just like putting me down for being caught up in this information, and it was like I'm really attracted to people that speak truth to power. Like it fucking turns me on, like not sexually, but just like it lights me up to
Yeah.
be presence of someone that is fearless and is questioning, the narratives that are being upheld. And um, yeah, I just encourage people to find your own way to do this, to liberate yourself. We practice a movement where we really work with this area because we say this is the decision-making center because it's where it's we make decisions by how we speak.
Hmm.
What we talk about creates our world, right? And so I will catch myself saying things that, are habitual and I can pull them apart and give them to the earth and then replace it with what, I actually want to be saying about myself and or about the world.
Yeah.
So part of that journey though is learning to fucking scream and yell and deal with any pent up energy that's keeping you from discovering your voice in the first place. So have you had some emotional breakthroughs in your journey of learning to speak and
Um, I think my journey in learning to speak is probably going in a different direction than most people because I don't recall ever having a fear of speaking my truth.
cool.
Or, I was raised by a very strong woman and a very strong man
Wow.
in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So, I don't, my models, it was never modeled for me that women were supposed to be meek or women were supposed to, take a back seat. Like that was never part of my journey.
Yeah.
So for me, and we actually spoke about this when I had you on my podcast, it's more learning when to hold back,
Love
um,
that.
how to speak more gently, how to
Yeah.
speak in a way that isn't just like venting, but thinking like, what do I want to accomplish with this communication, and what are the best words and style to
Yeah.
use? So that's what I'm still mastering because have had a tendency to be more reckless and just say whatever and learn the hard way that doesn't go so well all the time.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. A strategy presents itself the more you study people.
Yeah.
Right? It's like studying, it's like being an anthropologist. You get to know that people are pattern based and you start to understand how they're going to react. And there is a way to get beyond their armor without trying to break it, and so the emotions play in there, feelings being really, like I'll notice if I'm in a room full of people and it's my turn to speak. If I don't say anything, the energy drops.
Hmm.
Like I know it's like I'm an actor in a movie and I skipped my lines and everyone's lost now.
Right.
So we are part of something very strange. And so you being called to go and speak truth to power in front of people, it gives them permission, it gives them it wakens up their ears, like it does something to our senses, and we're caught in this limited idea that we only have five senses.
Hmm.
And if we could really go back to being a little bit more psychic, a little more telepathic, then we wouldn't need to be yelling at people or trying to convince them of anything. We would just simply ask questions, and that would take away the knots that are bounding up people's, because it's really crazy to speak to a heavily programmed person right? What you witness is you starting to pull them out of hypnosis and they will attack you, or they will not, it's like an animal that's feeling threatened
Yeah,
and you see it in their eyes. And it's just crazy. It's that fluoride stare. It's that like, and it's filled with a lot of fear. And so, just being able to find a way to be compassionate for how fearful people are
yeah,
rather than be angry at them. It's kind of like, to me, during 2020, it was like the boogeyman entered the bedroom and everyone was just keeping the covers over their head and pretending that this isn't happening. But there's an energy to these advances, to these murder rituals, really. These are sorcery rituals.
definitely.
And then that's what the actions were, was you have to do this, this, and this to complete the ritual. The mask, the 6 feet away, like these are the same things they do in their little rituals.
Completely. Completely.
And so they were getting us to do, and that's kind of, I think, the whole point is to, and I believe all religion is dungeon programming, and that so I'm not hopeful when people get all religious and start blaming Satan, and it just looks like another program that's hijacking everyone, right? So it's really going to need the discretion and the discernment and know who to talk to and how much energy to give to certain things and pay attention to this, that, and the other. But if we could not be afraid to go into these things and learn and come into our intuition about what we think without it overwhelming our ability to be lucid and have adventures in the mountains and have powerful relationships in our life. So it is a balance. Do you find yourself having to, take breaks and really do things differently than you used to?
Yeah. Well, I've always had to take breaks because
Yeah.
like I said, like I come off as a hard ass, but I really am a softie. So even
Yeah.
when I was producing news 5 days a week for KPFK, like I ended up taking 2 years off from hard news. I couldn't even look at it because once I started to see how fake the world was and who was really running it, like it just hit me so hard. So,
Sure.
as a journalist, I'll go in and out. I will go on complete media fast for years at a time where I don't want to know anything. And after Mickey and I finished writing Plandemic 2, I like there was one hot spring open down in Truth or Consequences, and I drove down there and I just sobbed for
Yeah.
days.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I've been doing a podcast with Emily Moyer for 8 years. We do like super deep scorched earth conspiracy. We've been friends since we were kids in gymnastics together.
Wow.
And we just made the executive decision last week, like, can we be done with politics? Because it's so toxic.
Yeah.
So I'm once again back on a fast from tracking what I call the sham show, which is great because I'm just, reading Stephen Jenkinson's new book and making art and going back to enjoying my life and remembering that like not only is this whole thing a dream, but there are different layers of dream. And that whole matrix sham show divisive construct is its own dream. And I know for me, the less of my own attention I give it, the more peaceful my
Hmm.
little life is. And that's really all that I know that's real. Like, I put out a new book a couple years ago, and because of how crazy divided the media landscape is, the only shows I could get booked on were right-wing talk
Yeah.
shows.
Sure.
And then October 7th happened, and I started speaking out about like, this misuse and weaponization of the term anti-Semitism really isn't helping anyone.
Sure.
And these hosts would just start screaming at me about the Israel situation, and everyone wants me to take a side. And I'm like, I haven't been there. I don't know anything about it. I'm not educated. It's inappropriate for me to have an opinion. All I really know is what's happening on the ground here where I live,
Right.
which is why I'm shifting my focus to that.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. Well-deserved break from all the information, and it really does make a difference. People sometimes project that it's selfish to take time and to be by yourself and to reset, and that you should be fighting the good fight and stuff, but I think it's the opposite. It's actually very selfless to truly face yourself and heal. And it's like the 100th monkey thing, I think really exists, where if enough people become self-aware, come out of hypnosis entirely, and I'm still under various forms of hypnosis.
Me too.
I think it takes a lifetime. But yeah, just being able to acknowledge where we're at and then not get caught in this idea that, even having to take a break from family members, from friends that, you spend a lot of time with in your life. And yeah, people are going to be triggered, and that sucks that they don't understand that it's not about them, it's about you.
Yeah.
But, that's just the way people are. And even like I noticed like my dad can only see me the way he saw me when he had power over me.
Right.
So almost like we're in two different timelines, right? And then there's times where he's lucid and hears me and my shares and what I'm about and asks questions. And other times I'll be saying the same thing, and it's like the fluoride thing. And it's like there's a multiplicity to people. There's different parts of them, and they're not always available. Some part of them might go away and then get replaced with some cognitive dissonance that just hijacks them from being able to be in tune with themselves. Wow. So being in Santa Fe and New Mexico, it was also I drove all the way to Florida from Seattle because I wouldn't wear a mask, so I couldn't get on a plane, or I didn't think I'd get away with it. Um, and in the airports, it's so scary. I was afraid like I would freak out and I'd end up in jail just for trying to, keep a naked face. But
That's
uh,
why I haven't flown since 2019 because I
yeah,
fear that it's not gonna. I didn't do well with TSA before all this,
I know.
and I know myself and my limitations. It's just better to keep me out of
Yeah,
airports.
yeah, yeah. So, but on my drive to Florida, I drove through New Mexico, and there was a lot of fear in that state compared to a lot of other states.
I heard we had like kind of the worst lockdowns, and it freaked me out because when I left LA in 2019 and I just thought, well, I've lived in Santa Fe, I have people there, that's where I'll go. And I really, for a few months, didn't know what I was doing here.
Right.
And then they pulled the FOVA thing, and I knew instantly, like, oh, this is the thing. I get it. And I thought, oh, how great that my soul brought me here because we have the most Indians
Yeah.
and they have different laws. So we're going to shut this down. And I just chose the freest place. And it went completely the opposite, which was really a mind fuck. Is it okay if I say the F word?
Yeah. I love it.
Um, what got me through it was we had a really strong ecstatic dance community. And I
Um,
was insistent, like I was really loud, like we have to keep this going. Don't even take a week off. This has to
yeah.
continue.
Yeah.
And so we found a place in the woods and we had handwritten maps and secret code words, and no one brought their cell phones. And that really kept everyone sane
Cool. Cool.
throughout it. But yeah, New Mexico's crazy. And I'm diving deeper and deeper into it. Actually, just before we hopped on, I was doing more research into like what are the entities and the interests and the money that are trying to attack Santa Fe to this extent.
Yeah.
But we have the labs here, the nuke labs, and
Mm.
we also have Santa Fe Institute. And I knew David Martin like well before pandemic.
Mm.
So when I figured out what was going on with Santa Fe Institute, I reached out to him and he's like, oh, they're probably like the second most evil organization on the whole planet. Or he might have said in the country.
Yeah.
So just starting to understand how important this land is. And I think it's a lot more mystical and energetic
Yeah.
than it is like political per
Mm.
se.
Mm. Mm.
But yeah, we had some awful, awful lockdowns.
Totally tripped me out. Yeah, I was like, the signs were everywhere, like telling you how many people could be in your car on the highways and stuff. Like, because I went through the whole country almost, and it was just really surprising because I spent a lot of time. I lived in a pretty freaky little area in New Mexico called Alamogordo. It's the highest
Okay.
witchcraft rate per county in the world. Alfred Hitchcock said when he visited this, like, this is the weirdest place I've ever been in my life. So it's
Did you
intense.
experience it as weird like that?
Oh man, it's so intense. There's a known satanic group of 40 people, 20 doctors, 20 lawyers, and they maintain that balance. And it's been going on for a long, long time. And the sheriff knows about it. And there's nothing they can do because they have so much money.
Right.
They just have so much power. And we took our daughter in to ask about some bruising and some throwing up. And they said, because you had a baby at home and you didn't give him a vitamin K shot, she's about to die. And so they rushed her in. Turns out there was a total false thing because they gave her the vitamin K shot and she was fine so much quicker than it should have taken. So the test that was done was fraudulent, and it turns out the doctor that did that was one of these men in this group, and they wouldn't let us leave then because she wasn't gaining weight. And if we would have left, they were going to call CPS on us. But
Ugh.
we needed to get her out of there so that she'd seen this, testing that, and there's just no way that a little baby could rest and heal in an environment. And the nurses weren't talking to each other, and they were leaving the thing in her arm too long, that whatever that's
Mhm.
called. Like, it was so gnarly to be in such an unconscious environment. Like, we had to bring a shaman in there to do all this work, and then as soon as he got done with the work, one of the doctors came in and said, we're going to let you go, even though she hadn't gained any weight. And he went against what protocols are. So there are magical ways sometimes to intervene upon this realm and get people to do the right thing, by prayer, by focused intent, by clearing energy fields. So I learned a lot, but it was kind of like being in the presence of some real evil and also being in the presence of some real magical beings that could handle that kind of evil. Because
Yeah.
shamans understand when they go in to do a clearing like that, that there's going to be pressure on them to not, right? And so it ends up being like a spiritual warfare is real.
So real. And that is what we're dealing with
Yeah.
in a big way. Yeah, I mean, there is so much weirdness in New Mexico, which is part of why I love it.
Yeah.
I like living in places with mojo, with
Yeah.
magic. I need there to be other things happening. And when I
Totally.
get down on New Mexico, invariably I find myself in like a used bookstore and I see the books that the people here are reading or have read. And it reminds me, there are a lot of visionaries here, there are a lot of free thinkers here.
Yeah.
I'm in good company. But ultimately, for me, like I gave my life to spirit in 2008 in a putia ceremony. So where I live is not up to me.
Totally. That's cool. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's not my preference. It's like where spirit wants me. Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, totally. Same here. I got sent to Seattle again when I swore I'd never go, but Spirit told us to go back. And so much happened that needed to happen. And then I'm so thankful to be out now, though, the contrast and being out in Montana, I got guided here strongly. The day before we moved to this new home, the name of this town was said 3 different times on the day that we were moving, in a book, in a podcast, and in a movie. And it had
Ooh,
nothing to
great
do with.
confirmation.
Yeah, yeah. So we just keep, if we're listening to signs and omens and aren't embellishing them or over spiritualizing things, there's a really grounded way to be guided here. And yeah, New Mexico, I think, is just because this one area, which happens to be really close to an Apache reservation where there's a lot of real satanic. A lot of the reservations have become very satanic in that, the drug use is very, the types of huffing and the things that the entity attachments that happen on those really impoverished areas, it's like the suicide energy is just extreme, right? So it spreads out, and so we have all these really ancient powerful places that have been destroyed, and the
Yeah.
people have been destroyed. And Don Juan explains that not only were the natives hunted and killed and imprisoned, they had their spirituality taken from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's different than just like, and so we just need to be aware of the spirits of trauma and do our best, to find a way to heal so that our cup is overflowing so that we can support people who are ready to also find their own way to do that, and being a voice in this world. I never planned on sharing online or talking. It was very much going to be private. But when all this stuff happened, when with the 2020, I just was like, I have to talk. I have to give people another way of looking at things because what's going to happen, people are going to need some conversation around what's coming, so that they're in their bodies and not, having to just numb themselves, and which is fine. I don't judge people for whatever you do with your time here. I think sometimes in the Castaneda books that this old man, he knew he was dying and he used alcohol as a means to feel and travel the country, and it was his way of opening his heart. He didn't have another way to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Is all this judgment that people have around the what's the right thing to do and low vibe and this, that, and the other. Actually, I've learned some really powerful things from people that walk in really dangerous walks of life. Everyone has a message. My teacher would pick up like a meth head off the street and do an exorcism, and he'd get like 15 years off of him. It's like he just come out shining, and but he's gonna go back and just do some more. So I don't know if that's the best thing to do for someone, because sometimes rock bottom actually is better than than giving people support, right? It's almost always the case.
Yeah, I see this happening here because when I went back to LA, there were so many changes, but the homelessness was really out of control. And I see that starting to happen here in a big way. And they have, it's so gross. So all over town, they have these posters. We don't really have billboards, but they're like on the side of buses or in front of stores. And there are two fentanyl pills. So the visual programming. And it
Yeah.
says, don't take fentanyl alone, have a friend.
All
So
right.
this is the programming going on here. And every city council meeting I go to is about the free housing they're building for the homeless. And
Wow.
it's like, stop you're not helping anyone, and I'm really big into solutions. So when I go to city council meetings, I say, 90% of our recycling is going into the trash because it's not cleaned down and the labels aren't taken off. So how about everyone who's getting free drugs and free healthcare and free housing volunteers at the recycling center, and then we get to up level, our environmental impact. And they just think I'm insane. Like they're not interested in any actual solutions, but I'm not a fan of free handouts. I'm not, it just doesn't help anyone. It like lends the idea that these people are disempowered. Like I didn't like it after Me Too when they started this thing like, this is a women-owned business, so you should shop here. And it's like, don't ghettoize my
Yeah.
gender. Like we don't need you to throw us bones. There have been women-owned businesses since before I'm born, and it's not really that big of an achievement. So stop ghettoizing these different identitarian groups, because all you're doing is dividing us and disempowering us.
Wow, totally. Yeah, it's very effective and well thought out and pre-planned, and what it's done to certain communities that identify with that as just a standard way of living. And yeah, it's really hard to convince people otherwise, but it's going in the opposite direction in which it needs to, and therefore it's going to get really difficult. Everywhere we look, it's spreading. And I don't think that necessarily changes, but we get to become, as Jason Bashir talks about, we can create our own reality tunnel so that we're not being hijacked by the collective reality.
Exactly. There are always pockets.
Yeah.
We can, this is what I learned during the lockdowns was I was observing what was going on and I realized, oh, people like to follow orders and be told what to do. So
Hmm.
I'll just tell them what to do and I'll be the order giver and
There
that
you
will
go.
work. And it did.
Yeah.
I would call up a store and say, hey, just letting you know I'm coming in without a mask. I need you to let your staff know to not hassle me. And they'd be like, okay.
That's awesome. Yeah. You. Oh, it's so powerful. Yeah. Often it's the simplest solution that's right in front of us, and we just can take a lifetime to realize that stuff that, like, or just telling your like, I don't go to doctors, but like advocating for your needs with whoever you're working with at the post office or at the grocery store. Like they work for you, but we're so like afraid of everything, and we're so like shy or whatever, that we don't realize the power that we have. just by being proactive essentially and communicate. And so a lot of what I help people with is I work with a lot of couples to help them communicate with each other because the communication's gotten really difficult.
Yeah.
And it's super simple stuff, right? But it's so not simple,
Right.
right? And so it's like this with each situation, you're just pulling at threads and sort of pulling things out and expanding the view of what's, and taking it back to the blueprint of how it all got established. And it's very tricky territory. As soon as a breakthrough starts to happen, usually the wounded parts start coming out and panicking, right? So just in that observation, then you apply that to large groups of thought,
Yeah.
and so what, like someone like Mark Gober, who's hanging out still with all these Ivy League people and presenting these concepts, he does it in a way that, like, it gets past their wounding somehow because they respect his background in a way that it's just a funny thing to be observing. um and it is like the hypnosis, whether people like it or not, I think is going to be coming off, and people are going to go berserk,
Oh yeah.
and it's going to be really intense to be in the world observing.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think that's why a lot of us are spread out. Like I have friends who are totally awake and they're still in Portland or they're still in San Francisco. And it's like, we're where spirit needs us to be. It's funny because Emily and I were talking about Mark Gober on the podcast we recorded this week because we've been conspiracy theorists for such a long time.
Yeah.
We're just looking at like, why is he the breakthrough? Like, why is he the guy who's getting all this traction? And I think it's because he's operating from the masculine and we still have not rebalanced this culture. And that doesn't mean women in charge at all. It
Yeah.
just means valuing reason, logic, statistics, and data over intuition, emotion, downloads, and experience. And so I think that's why Mark is doing. I mean, Mark is lovely and brilliant and all of those things, but just looking at the space and like why he's making so many inroads, he's coming at it from such a masculine perspective. This is the data, this is the science, these are the studies. So he's speaking that language. And it's brilliant. I love that he's doing it. We're all benefiting from that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's such a good point, though. It is important to recognize that, and it can be triggering too when somebody's been doing this for a long time, and then somebody kind of steps in a little late in the game, and all of a sudden they're being. And so in the past, I think, oh, that might be controlled off. This is being done in that way. But knowing Mark and knowing a lot of the people in that community, I don't feel that at all, and I just think some people have that magnetism too, where that's their contract, and that's been pre-established.
Yep.
And yeah, he needed to be dense enough and masculine enough as a means to be accepted in the way that he is. So
Yep.
the background's perfect. But yeah, it's going to be more and more necessary that men realize that women have the capacity as an oracle. The home for a man and a woman, the energy of the home, the magic comes from the feminine.
Mhm.
And the man is aware of that and wants to create a container for that magic to be, so a man doesn't, in a healthy relationship, a man doesn't just go out and pick the piece of real estate to build the house on without consulting. It's not like that in a healthy environment. And so I think a lot of the work here is that if men and women can heal, then this whole place benefits. And it'll just be like this ripple of awareness that starts to spread as people stop running away from their shadow wound by getting another partner or getting a prostitute or all these unhealthy, unconscious wounds that have hijacked our chakra system. Or even if there is a chakra, whatever it is, our energy field is essentially, according to Toltecs, people are being run through their genitals, and
Yep.
they haven't learned how to move that energy into what, for Toltecs, you could use that energy to do lucid dreaming. You could use that energy to create a business. You could do all kinds of things. But most people don't ever really face their wound. around their sexual affection, their issues around affection.
Yeah.
And so people that like someone like Mark Gober came out of hypnosis pretty quickly, and he's going through it because the emotions that he's having to feel, right, as he's going through these healing processes and help and a crisis that he shared with me on my channel, and which is about to come out. And we're all going to have to do that. Men and women are going to have to feel their pain and the collective pain. And that takes courage.
It takes courage, and it also takes us supporting one
Yeah,
another. So this
beautiful.
fictional divide between men and women
Yeah,
is a psyop that we really need to let go of, and remembering that like we live in a realm of equal and opposite forces. So if the masculine is out of balance, then so too is the feminine to an absolutely proportionate degree. And what I've seen happening, second, third, fourth wave feminism is women pointing the fingers at men and
yeah,
becoming more and more masculinized ourselves,
yeah,
and not turning that gaze of inquiry onto ourselves and seeing like, well, is it really helping my community if I'm walking around with my ass cheeks hanging out?
right, right,
No, is
right,
that optimizing the men? Is that being respectful to my brothers? If
right,
I'm advertising and sexualizing myself 24/7, but then blaming them for
right.
looking at me,
Yeah.
I find that very annoying.
Oh,
Um, so I think, there are so many opportunities for us to heal and come together right now. And I think that's a big one. And I also think, since, we're talking about Mark Gober, because I also just interviewed him,
cool.
um, is he's so humble and well socialized. And one thing that I've noticed about a lot of people who've been in the conspiracy space for a long time, because there's this fresh crop that
Yeah,
woke up after COVID, is
yeah,
that we can be more unhinged and like insane because we've been pushing against the grain for so long and like trying to ring this bell for so long. And so I think that that's also helpful that,
mhm,
Mark is just like, he's very diplomatic, he's a very kind, generous communicator. And I think that's something like I look at that, when I'm watching Mark and I'm like, like these would be good qualities for me to start to cultivate as well, because there's nothing like his information is confronting. It's
yeah,
confronting enough, but he's not. And I think a lot of us are so freaky deaky in our personality that when we're trying to communicate, really difficult information, people are just going to reject all of it.
yeah. Amazing. Yeah. And it's so what I appreciate about him is he really has taken on this idea that I don't know, because I tend to be so I've been in the past like really confident that I do know,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna make fun of you for not knowing, and all that doesn't work, right? It's just
Right.
like it's just a battle that I end up, and that's the wounded part of me wanting to be validated, and then that's the rebel in me that wants to like, show people how to do it, and it's just all wounding. It's all has to do with whatever happened in kindergarten and preschool or grade school. It's just if we can go back and clear all that stuff, like I call it clearing the cringe.
Yeah.
We can just sit in a cringe moment and not run away from the revisiting of that feeling.
Yeah.
It starts to get less cringy, and then I'm less and less likely to play out those patterns.
It has to be done for those who are wanting to heal and awaken. And you mentioned earlier the mind control and like trying to have a conversation with someone who's just parroting their mind control. I've studied this really intently because I'm always looking for like, how do we undo that mind control? And that mind control is bound to the unintegrated trauma.
Yeah.
That's why people's emotional reactions are so overblown when we're talking about something so simple as like the dude in the oval who none of us have ever met at all.
Yeah.
But because the mind control attaches to real unintegrated trauma, the
Yeah.
emotional reactions are real,
Mm.
and then there's no getting through them. And so what I realized, I learned this through like a lot of my like float tank sessions,
Yeah.
is the only way to be sovereign is to heal all of that unintegrated trauma so there's no vulnerabilities for the would-be controllers to hook into.
Amazing. Yeah. Well said. Yeah. It's all so powerful to watch and witness, and I get in on X and I listen to flat earthers debate globe earthers because it's consumed their life.
Oh, yeah.
It's insane.
Just the fact that they've added the ER onto a belief structure and now it's an identity, the shape of a planet, is amazing.
It's just a perfect thing to like witness as to how obsessed people are. And I think it's very liberating to ask questions. Like I love listening to Mike Wilkerson, who just came out on The Way Forward. His explanation of coming out of that of what he, was under hypnosis around the way in which this place works. So everyone has some great breakthroughs around this is an area not to be avoided. I think we should question. I think we're in a holographic projection. And I think it's a dreamscape based on people's perception. But I don't think what we've been told is going to be accurate because the inversion is designed to keep us as far away from the simplicity. And the
Yes.
more complex a subject gets, to me, the more it's of the intellect, it's not actual, right? And so it's just taking people so far away from their ability to use their intuition by getting into all the details of all of it to the point where it's consumed them. So these rabbit holes, in my opinion, are designed with booby traps. And it's about getting in and out of these things without getting trapped. And then you become discerning, you gain discretion, you start to getting your yes and no dialed in. Like, is this a yes? Do I really want to listen to this podcast?
Right.
Or do I want to listen to the wind and the birds? Like, it's such an intense thing when you realize that you're on autopilot all the time and so this really is like getting back into our bodies, figuring out a way to get to know what we want to feel. How do we want to spend the rest of our lives? And being honest with ourselves about the trajectory that we're on currently so that we can like have those inquiries about our death and what would it be like for this to be the last day, or if this was my last week, what would I do with it? And then is there a way that you could do that? Because it's very possible that it is. But as you become more aware of that, the universe will support you in the most unique ways when you break the patterns of fear. And it's not some extreme leap of faith where you just sell everything and trust the universe will catch you by just going. I mean, that can be cool. Like Jason Bashir talks about pattern breaks. And he did a lot of them in his life in order to come out of certain situations, and it does work. But if it's masculine and desperate and a woman's trying to copy the way Jason does it, it's not likely to work because women and men are different. And so we tend to get out of our intuition when we are listening to people and we're attracted to the discoveries they made. We end up then trying to conform to that. And it has to be very personal, I think, in order for each person to get free.
I agree. I started asking myself in college, um, where did this idea come from? Is this my opinion? Is this a program? It was just kind of that became the practice. Is this a program? Is this a program? Where did I get this idea, this rule that I'm living by? Like, whose is this? And I think that's really important. And I've noticed, since making videos, and it's always my preference to just be a writer and be a journalist. And as those doors have closed, I've just pivoted, and I definitely look forward to getting back to writing because I think it works better for me to have that time and thoughtfulness to read it. Do I really want to say this versus just blurting, which, isn't necessarily my strong suit. But noticing how many people they like a certain content creator, they like a certain YouTube channel, and then that person shares one idea that
Yeah.
the other person doesn't agree with, and then they're canceled and we can't
Right.
listen to them anymore. And it's like, when did we become so intolerant? And it scares me. Like,
Yeah.
I get scared if someone's listening to my channel and agrees with everything that
Yeah.
I'm saying. Like, that is a red flag. Like, no, I want everyone to be thinking for themselves. And
Yeah.
just in terms of the fear, when you asked me earlier about taking breaks, that's my red flag. If I'm tuning into news or reading an article or listening to a podcast, and I'm starting to feel fear about the world, I need to take a break. I need to step away, because my time in this body, in this dream, is short, and I don't want to waste it running fear and worst case scenarios through my body.
Yeah.
And last week I took a day off, and I have had a tendency to just work all the time, and like, there's so much to be done and there's so many people to help, and I'll rest, when I'm dead or
Yeah.
whatever. And I went paddleboarding on the lake, and I realized, like, me radiating this frequency is far more beneficial to the world than writing 10 more books.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's so powerful. So glad you found that, and that clarity might not be there all the time, but you'll keep getting more and more reminders, right? And we don't have to beat ourselves up if we forget and find ourselves back in autopilot. And it's just part of our patterns, they're really thick.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are really hard on themselves. Change takes time, and we're lucky if we even change at all. Like, it's a real thing. To Toltecs say, there actually isn't a way to change. Our blueprints are so thick, but your impeccable spirit attempts to regardless, and then you feel, even if you fail, there's no failing, because you did everything within your power, and you feel good because you did your best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of, I know you mentioned like the cringe.
Yeah.
And so, I am a big believer in our ability to transform, and the gene keys are a
Yeah.
tool that I really resonate with. And so, if we're, transmuting a shadow and moving into the gift, we're still in the same frequency band of the same key,
Yeah.
so we're still living our blueprint. But for us to transmute our shadows means acting out the shadows and living the negative repercussions of those shadows. And if we don't have the courage to do that, then
Yeah.
we will never be able to transmute them. We
Totally.
have to deal with them out in the open. And, I was speaking about this on a podcast I did this week, how in the Gene Keys, there's a repressive expression of the shadow and a reactive expression of the shadow. And recognizing how, especially in spiritual communities, there's much more tolerance for repressive shadow
Yeah.
expressions than there is for reactive
Yeah.
shadow expressions. And I look forward to us giving the same generosity and compassion and empathy to people who are expressing the reactive shadows, because if we're not expressing them, we're not going to heal them and transmute them.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's a messy business.
It's messy.
Yeah, and if we want to keep it all clean, it's not going to work out. It's kind of like purging is going to, a lot of people will try to stop themselves from puking, even though their body's wanting them to,
Yeah.
right? It's that kind of thing. It's like it's gonna feel so much better, shout, shout, get it all out. These are the things, like, if we can just borrow from the simplest concepts, there's so much healing inside of purging, not only our bodies but our emotions, and getting to know what thoughts are natural, right? I think there's two voices running, and it's like it's a real relationship with listening as to where are these thoughts coming from. And I find that the natural ones are soft and loving and supportive.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to something that's super, anxiety inducing, that means it's coming from that hive mind, and there is a way to purify that through discipline. But ultimately, I watch a lot of people try to discipline themselves past their wounding,
Yeah.
and they really it doesn't work in the end. It backfires. I know a lot of performance athletes who are really falling apart,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh my God, it's so much feminine energy is needed both on the masculine in the male and the female world. Women have been competing with men and have cut themselves off from their power by trying to do male-like things in a male-like world. And then men, have essentially in their confusion around why the women have become, even though it's all there's just so much, basically it's being replaced. The men are turning more feminine and going to crystals and spirituality and less like in their bodies cutting firewood, and it's just crazy to observe. But you, I, and anyone else that can just be aware of our own way in which that's happening, if we can heal that, then we won't be pointing fingers at anyone. And that's where the actual, if the projections stop, right, then we can actually co-create. But especially I notice with women, they compete with each other.
The feminine shadow is really a hard ass. The masculine shadow is more overt. We
Right.
see it, it's out in the open. But the
Yeah.
feminine shadow is subversive, and it's like quietly, invisibly mean and destructive. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, yeah. So but regardless, just because most those patterns are likely going to play out for many, it actually serve as a messaging system. If you're at a party and you're seeing all the women sort of like the jealousies and the attention grabs and all the different power dynamics, it get to know, how does that feel in your body watching that? Do you find yourself wanting to do the same thing? And then you just start to become more and more conscious. So it's all good to be a hermit, and I think we talked about this last time, but it's when you go into relationships or into social groups where you find out where your wounds really are, and then yeah, being able to have the courage to speak to this stuff and not just be all intellectual, but actually get into the more somatic, emotional pieces. And I'm really happy to see more and more women in my life are going deeper and deeper into their wounding, because I
Yeah,
think we're taught to avoid depression, but that's where the foundation is in the depths.
right.
And the depths of the feminine is not like, men are designed to climb to the top of their mountain and stand on top and say, this is who I am. And women are designed as a means, they already have access to everything. Their
Yeah.
intuition, their oracles, they're capable of not only like this idea that women came from a man's rib.
Hmm.
It's so insane. We've been told such an insane thing. Like,
Right.
there's no way. Like, men were birthed through women. Like I think women were here and cloned themselves for long periods of time before men were birthed into this realm.
Hmm.
And I think we're just in a great need for women to stop being complacent around their capacity and their power to evolve and therefore birth a new world.
I agree, and I appreciate you saying that because I mean, for me, it can be women, it could be gay people, black people, like whatever it is, but relinquishing the victim identity and
Yeah,
stop internalizing any notions of disempowerment.
totally.
I don't jive with any ideas that women are second class or women are marginalized, because I don't internalize that and I don't meet the world that way.
Right.
And if anyone tries to project that story onto me, it's so silly that I wouldn't fight it. It's just like, that's adorable. It's like a 5-year-old playing policeman trying to arrest me. I'm not going to be like, no, you have no power over me. I'll just be like, oh, that's so cute. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and so it's for all of us to recognize, like, where am I buying into some like externally indoctrinated story of disempowerment? And if we are buying into it, it's getting honest with, like, why is it serving me to identify as a victim? Like, what benefits am I really truly getting? And being very honest. and then just looking at, well, how can I give those things to myself? Because usually it's, I want some external validation, I want some recognition. And it's like, well, then get into a practice of validating yourself.
Yeah.
Every day I'm talking to myself all day, every day. You're doing a great job being you. Oh, look at you putting your shoes on like a badass. Like whatever it is, I'm encouraging myself all day as like my favorite cheerleader so that I don't need that from anyone else. And not only do I not need that, but then when I'm meeting other people, I have extra resources available to acknowledge them and
Yep.
give them stuff instead of making it about me. And I think that's another piece, when we were talking about, like when you were in Seattle during the lockdowns and, where we are is recognizing that like not everything is about me,
Right.
and me being in Santa Fe during the lockdowns might not have been about me, might have been about the example that I was setting for other people and how I was doing it.
Totally.
So I go to, it's the Bhagavad Gita as well as the 28th Gene Key, where it's like, I do what I came here to do because that's why I came here to do. Whether anyone recognizes it, whether there's validation or rewards, or is totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because I'm also operating with a more like kind of multidimensional, eternal idea.
Mhm.
So I know that on some level, all that is witnessing what I'm doing, you know,
Mhm.
and that's really all I need to know is like I can sleep at night. I'm acting in integrity, and recognizing that there's a much bigger, more interdependent, multidimensional game at play, and it's not just about me getting what I want in this moment.
Wow. Oh, it's very good to hear. Yeah, there's a way to lose our self-importance and the me. What about me? What am I gonna get out of this? And then we just spend our whole lives in from that place if we don't recognize it. And so you gave a really good example, and I agree that to me the Earth Mother's conscious, the trees are aware, the sun, is an incredible energy that our body receives all this boost from. I think it's masculine, and I think there's a beautiful balance here. And these magical creatures, the sun and the earth, can actually validate us so that we're not looking for validation from a person. And so I think that's where a lot of healing happens is you can truly no longer care or be at odds with how people perceive you or the world. And then there's lucidity is going to happen. You're going to become that much more creative, and you're going to have the courage to speak to all the areas instead of being, under that kind of fear of either being rejected, right? So that's where the fool in the tarot card gets
Yeah.
that they say it's the beginning of the deck, but maybe it's the end, it's the zero.
Right.
So the fool ends up being the most free, right? And the fool is teaching the world something. It's the jester in a sense. It's making fun of himself and everyone by just being a freak.
Yeah.
And it's very liberating so that's what Toltecs do too. They'll go and play a different character. They'll go to another town where nobody knows them and put on a cowboy hat and cozy up to the bar and start talking, and you can tell that I think they don't care if people know they're pretending or not, because
Right.
it's called controlled folly. You're playing with people in an exercise that will free you. And so a lot of actors are actually very liberated people. Some of them got MK Ultra in order to do that,
Yeah.
probably most, but it's, I've heard like Philip Seymour Hoffman say there's no greater high than acting, right? And it's a fucking buzz when you are not in your Danny Katz, you get to play somebody else. And then that wild part of you that you weren't able to express gets to play in some extreme character. And it's just like, so I think we should all go back to theater and, play with our bodies, get down on the ground and turn into animals. And that's going to break up the self-importance. And so much of us, we're like looking at ourselves, how we look on a screen and the videos, and it's going to take like making ugly faces and doing really, uncomfortable things as a means to not only for yourself, but to help others to come out of their self-importance.
Absolutely. I mentioned I did a lot of ecstatic dance, which wasn't my preference, but as a dancer, they didn't have contemporary dance here.
Yeah.
And just learning with ecstatic dance, it's just what wants to move through me. And it might be moving ugly or moving awkward. And like it was such a shift from wanting to look the prettiest all the time and just recognizing the value in the full field of expression and not just the one version that culture has told us is acceptable.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, I spent a lot of time on the dance floor at lots of different music and um yeah, and a lot of ecstatic dance back in the day before I found out they were all super liberal. And it's been really shocking to just, and people just assume I'm just fully liberal. Like just
Right?
they like wear, I don't know, whatever it is, they just assume. And so they just start talking to me as if I'm one of these people. And I'm in such a small town that I'm just like, I'm just gonna, just not respond really, because I'm not needing more trauma by having a community reject me. I want to be able to go to the restaurant,
Right.
just enjoy Missoula, right? So, but if I was in Bozeman, that's different.
Yeah.
There's a tension there. There's people holding on to the right and not willing to let the left take over. And so it's just crazy to be inside of all this. But thank you so much, Dani. It's been so great to speak with you. And I want to make sure people know the different things you offer, and you could share what it is that I know you have like a group that people are some courses.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for having me, Joel. Much
Yeah,
appreciated. So, I do have a few courses on my website, some webinars
cool.
around quantum languaging. I have an 11 module pop propaganda media literacy course that I created for teens who are being homeschooled.
Nice.
Um, During lockdown, I was invited to teach a homeschool collective, and I thought I really can't think of anything more important than propaganda and just, honing their critical thinking skills and
Wow.
teaching teens to recognize media manipulation. So I have that on my site. I have a group coaching community. We meet Monday nights called Know Thyself Salon. And I have a bunch of books for sale on my website, including my newly revised transformational coloring book, Yes, I Am.
Nice. Oh, wonderful. Well, I encourage you all to check out Dani's podcasts, and she has an amazing capacity to talk about real shit in a way that's not fake, and has a lot. I really appreciate your wild spirit and the fact you speak to the truth of things and don't sugarcoat anything at all. And
Thank you.
glad that you're out in the world sharing. So look forward to further conversations, and we'll see you all next time. Much love, everybody.